90% of the planet consumes some form of caffeine every single day. There is no other substance that compares to that. But here's like where the cognitive dissonance comes in. 90% of people that are consuming caffeine want to consume less. The question is, why don't they? There's a half-life range of caffeine of 1.5 to 10.5 hours. It's called bioindividuality. Half-life means after that 10.5 hours, you're half as much in your serum, in your blood. 10.5 more hours, half as much as that, you're at a quarter. So it can literally be days later. Adaptation is another aspect where you have kind of diminishing returns.
I don't feel any energy from coffee anymore.
200 milligrams became the gold standard. Bang came out, 300 milligrams. Then you have pre-workout, 400 milligrams. That's the upper limit by the FDA is 400 milligrams.
Whoa.
That's why it doesn't go beyond that.
The trick with energy is if you want to feel switched on, you need to feel it now.
So that led to me finding paraxanthine. When we look at paraxanthine, we don't have that bioindividuality. It's a short half-life. You can clear it out. We're not seeing the impact on heart rate, blood pressure, brain fog, sleep disruption. And we think that's how it is. It doesn't have to be like that. And there's some people like maybe on the first try, they might be like, well, I'm not getting all these side effects, so I'm not feeling anything.
Not jittery. This isn't working.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel all fucked up.
Exactly.
You have to unlearn, really.
This is an unlearned moment, folks. Paraxanthine, how, the first time I heard about it, I was telling Daniel that I heard about it from Dr. John Lawrence. And
He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah. And I listened to you guys. I love the podcast that you guys did with Luke Story. Yeah, Luke, obviously a close friend of mine. You guys are all great friends now. Has been just a great resource for me of learning, whether it's biohacking or just seeing things differently, right? You guys are a perfect example. Made the introduction to you guys. Even before I met you, he shared a bunch of the product with here. One of these Tuesday nights, he brought a bunch of product for the guys. And so he's been a great, kind of ambassador. But John sent me some powdered paraxanthine, and then he has some in some different troches.
Yeah.
And so I still haven't, I was telling Daniel.
With the methylene blue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I have done the troches with the methylene blue, but I haven't tried the powder yet. So that's around the corner for me. But how did paraxanthine come into your orbit?
Yeah, it's something that, so maybe you don't know this, that one, I've patented about 40 ingredients to this point, formulated over 1,000 products, worked for over 70 companies in supplements, biohacking, beverages, etc. Helped 11 companies go to sale in that space. So I've done a lot of work for about 25 years, and I brought out T-Crean and Dynamine, which are very popular in nootropics, pre-workouts, fat burners. They're probably in more than 500 products.
Shit.
And that really upended caffeine because there was a lot of people that obviously sensitive to caffeine, had side effects to caffeine. And T-Crean, which is a little bit longer acting, Dynamine is a little bit shorter acting. Those were just pretty incredible nootropics. But after I released those, they were getting combined with caffeine quite a bit. I still had some issues with them, some sensitivity to them. They're in that kind of methylxanthine family. And I was searching for something that was cleaner. I've always been sensitive to caffeine. So that led to me finding theacrine, which we call T-Crean, methyliberine, which we call Dynamine, and ultimately paraxanthine, which we call Infinity.
And when you say sensitive, what does your sensitivity look like? Yeah,
so it's a great question. That the majority of us, over 60% of us, have sensitivity to caffeine. We are slow metabolizers of caffeine, and that's the cytochrome P450 pathway with the liver that is metabolizing demethylating compounds, and specifically this gene is CYP1A2. And you can look at this when you do genetic testing and see what your caffeine sensitivity is. That said, even if you know that you're sensitive, there's a range. So a fast metabolizer, for example, is someone who can have caffeine and go straight to bed. You all know those people. Like
Daniel and I were just discussing this. We're those guys.
So I am far from that guy. I've always kind of hated those people. They're like, yeah, I'll have the espresso.
No offense,
it's like
Daniel.
a 9 o'clock dinner. You know, we're in Vegas. I'll have the espresso. And it's like, do you want to have the espresso with us? I'm like, no. Like I literally would be like this at 8 a.m. staring at the ceiling. So for me, I'm on the very far end. So what's crazy is, you know, it's called bioindividuality, right? Like that we're all biologically unique. And that comes down to genetics, epigenetics, et cetera. And so there's a half-life range of caffeine of 1.5 to 10.5 hours.
Damn.
And when you talk about, so half-life means after that 10.5 hours, you're half as much in your serum, in your blood. 10.5 more hours. Half as much as that, you're at a quarter.
Oh,
10.5 more hours, half as much as that, in eighth. So it can literally be days later for me when I'm clearing caffeine out of my system. So I have basically all the side effects and none of the benefits. The fast metabolizer has basically none of the side effects, but not really much of the benefits either. And then there's kind of the Goldilocks zone, as we'd call it in science, where it's kind of like the perfect spot in between where they're going to have very little side effects, but good benefits. And I would say that's only about 20% of people. Add to
I'm
that.
on the other. I have none of the side effects and none of the benefits. I don't feel any energy from coffee anymore.
So add to that the physiologic aspects of caffeine where there's habituation. That means your physiologic dependence.
Yep.
In rodent studies, after 3 days, they needed that level of caffeine just to get to baseline, where everyone else would be that's not taking caffeine. So it literally is not having benefits. And when you see people in line at Starbucks and they're like, oh my God, I can't function. I need this. Like I'm a zombie. Like, you know, my start button is caffeine, whatever, all these like, you know, coffee mugs and things that you see that are like, you know, it's like, I can't do it. I need my coffee.
First coffee, then.
Yeah, exactly. It's real, right?
Yes,
it's real.
it is.
So it is a dependence. So that is habituation. Then adaptation is another aspect where you have kind of diminishing returns. You probably remember as a kid, like you had, well, at least when I was a kid, I don't know how old you are.
52.
Oh, damn. Okay. I'm 50. So you look amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Really, you do. You're a very good looking guy. So when I was a kid, so you remember this too, like Coca-Cola was like, wow, that's caffeine, 60 milligrams. Yeah. And then it was like Mountain Dew, holy crap.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was 80 milligrams.
Mountain Dew, yeah.
Then Jolt came out.
Oh, fuck
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Jolt was 100 milligrams.
Yeah.
Then it was like, if you remember like the pre-workout, early 90s, like pre-workout, Rip Fuel, all these things, 200 milligrams became the gold standard for fat loss because there was a study on that. And then they were adding ephedrine and whatever. Then it was like Bang came out, 300 milligrams. Then you have pre-workouts, 400 milligrams.
Shit.
That's actually what's GRAS level now, meaning generally recognized as safe. That's the upper limit by the FDA is 400 milligrams.
Whoa.
That's why it doesn't go beyond that.
Wow.
That's why like Panera Bread had their charged lemonade that killed someone, a young girl.
Yeah.
Because it's like 395 milligrams for a serving. A serving is 8 ounces. She was probably drinking, you know, just at a meal. Maybe she had other caffeine as well prior, but she might have had 2, 3, 4 servings of lemonade with her meal.
Oh my God.
20 ounces or whatever. She had over a gram of caffeine and she died. So, you know, that's where this is where there's diminishing returns on caffeine and we need more and more and more. That's the adaptation effect. And so when we look at paraxanthine, we don't have that bioindividuality. We don't have that wide range. Almost everyone experiences it around 3 to 3.5 hours. It's a short half-life. You can clear it out. You can go work out in the evening and get great sleep, whether it's you or it's me.
Okay.
We both experience it the same way. When I've talked to other people about caffeine, it sounds like we're talking about two completely different compounds.
Sure.
The way I experience it and the way you experience it is very different.
My wife and I are like that.
Mhm.
She's more like you. She gets jittery and just, it doesn't like, it's really hard for her to get off it. Where I'm curious now, hearing you talk about this, it's like, I don't prefer to be off it because I like, Daniel and I were talking about earlier, the ritual of it, like most people.
Yeah.
But I can go off it, not a problem. It's not like I have withdrawals or it feels funky, maybe a day I'm like, I really love it. But it's more of like probably the habituation of like, I'm just ready. I want the ritual of it. I want just something warm. I like the taste, but I don't get the boost. And so I don't feel kind of a withdrawal that when my wife goes off it, she does have a bit of a zombie effect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, like you use that word because it actually reminds me of like, I don't know if you've seen the show or played the video game The Last of Us on HBO. But it's
I watched
about
the first couple episodes.
It's about like this cordyceps, which is a type of mushroom, a fungus, and which is actually a great supplement. I don't know why they kind of bang on it in the show, make it some bad thing. But anyway, like Michael Pollan in his book Caffeine, I'm sure you know all the work that he's done on psychedelics, which is a huge passionate subject of mine. We could do a whole other show on that.
Well,
I'm very, very, very
tap
passionate
into that.
Very passionate about that topic. But he talks about in his book Caffeine that like, maybe these plants are actually using us because of our physiologic dependence on these plants. We're planting more of them.
Yeah.
90% of the planet consumes some form of caffeine or another every single day. If I was to tell you 90% of the people eat every day, that may not be true. 90% of the people shower every day, that may not be true. Maybe 90% of the people go to the bathroom every day, may not be true.
Right.
90% of the planet is consuming caffeine. There is no other substance that compares to that. But here's like where the cognitive dissonance comes in. 90% of people that are consuming caffeine want to consume less. The question is, why don't they? And you know why? Because they're dependent on it.
I'm glad you brought up Michael Pollan because I hadn't heard of caffeine until a buddy told me about it this spring. And so I listened to the audiobook and it, for one, I was a little embarrassed that I didn't realize how caffeine worked.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize the adenosine receptors and how all that. And when I saw the puzzle that way, I was kind of like, fuck coffee. Like, I feel like it was hijacking me and selling me this, kind of bill of goods that it's like, yeah, it just gives you energy. It's like, no. So I'd love for you, because you break it down probably more succinctly than I could. I'd love for you to talk about how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe how coffee works on those receptors and how paraxanthine works with those, or if it does or doesn't. And then dig a little deeper into what you said, because I don't want people to miss what you said. That was really important, that maybe the plants are using us for their proliferation.
Yeah, we're not the only species on the planet. If you watch Jurassic Park or like Michael Crichton's kind of stuff, like it's not like an outlandish thought to think everything is trying to survive. That's the mission God laid out for all of us. That's like the basis of Maslow's pyramid, to survive. These species are trying to survive. And actually caffeine is in plants as a toxin to insects to keep them away. And we find that caffeine actually has almost all the side effects, but really none of the benefits. The benefits, this is kind of the jackpot for me, for us, is that paraxanthine is the thing that has the benefits. And so it works, being paraxanthine and caffeine for that matter, as an adenosine inhibitor.
Mm-hmm.
And adenosine receptors are what is going to make you feel sleepy, right? And so when you're inhibiting that receptor, it's going to cause wakefulness. And so that's part of it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many other aspects to paraxanthine in particular that actually when you disclude caffeine, even though caffeine endogenously, meaning in the body, converts to paraxanthine as well as theophylline and theobromine. When it converts to paraxanthine, when you're avoiding caffeine as well as those other compounds, you're going straight to the source and you're getting all the benefits without the side effects. And so what we see is like a holistically different experience, entirely different experience. People just say like, well, I have caffeine, what's the difference? Or if 70 to 80% of caffeine converts to paraxanthine, what's the difference? Well, what I just went through was there's a drip drop effect of caffeine converting to paraxanthine that could take days.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not experiencing the clean energy, the wakefulness, and it's not just that clarity or energy. You're getting more blood flow to the brain. You're getting more neuroplasticity. You're getting upregulation of dopamine, serotonin, like these feel-good neurotransmitters. That's glutathione and oxidase are increased, and oxidative stress is decreased. Like literally, your brain is becoming healthier. Whereas when we look at caffeine, especially if you're a slow metabolizer, we're seeing not just more side effects. There's more heart attack risk, more stroke risk, like shorter life. And so, it's a completely different experience when you go straight to paraxanthine. And that's what we're seeing when we put them side by side in all these studies is it's night and day. They're not even in the same realm of experience. It's a much cleaner feeling. You don't have the habituation. You don't have the adaptation. You don't have the side effects. We actually see HRV improve on paraxanthine, whereas caffeine, we see it dramatically worsen.
Well, I wonder because again, before Daniel, I had some time to chat earlier, and I heard on the podcast with Luke that was one of the things. I think it was Ben had realized his HRV had improved, and mine's been chronically low for a long time, and I'm just curious to see what kind of effect caffeine, coffee has on that. And now, as I've just recently gone off coffee, what the experience will be like with the update. I mean, paraxanthine, but through your drink. I'm really curious to track that. And I am curious, what would this be equivalent to as far as caffeine milligrams? Can you convert it that way? Like, what would you say? Or how do you talk about dosing?
You can't convert it. I think like the best parallel I've been able to draw is think about when you're like smoking a joint and you're inhaling part THC, part CBD, but the feeling you get is this like psychoactive high because the THC, the psychoactive nature of the THC overrides that of the therapeutic benefits you might feel from the CBD.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to then split those two compounds one for one, consume THC in the same quantity as the CBD, you would still feel the psychoactive high from the THC, but you wouldn't feel anything from the CBD. If you were to take 10 times as much CBD as you were to the THC, you still wouldn't feel psychoactively high from the CBD. So now think about caffeine being like the THC and the rest of caffeine's metabolites, and paraxanthine being like the CBD. You can consume far greater quantities, just get the benefits you want without that psychoactive, or in the case of caffeine, this toxic side effect or toxic side effects that you would get. So it's a tough question because people want to know, like, okay, if I'm used to drinking 1 cup of coffee, how many updates should I have? And I think it's just a vastly different experience. Caffeine really overstimulates you. If depending on how you metabolize it, your heart rate's increasing, you're getting anxious, you're getting jittery, you're crashing a few hours later. When you're on paraxanthine, it's far more of this, focus, motivation, mood boost. for a much shorter time frame, but you don't notice the crash.
Yeah, is it more like a gentle on ramp and off ramp?
Exactly. And so you can't really look at them like comparing apples to apples, unfortunately.
I think that's again, that makes perfect sense to me. I think
that's a great metaphor.
You would know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like to, a way to think about it lately for me has been the flow without the frazzle.
Yeah.
So caffeine I associate with, yes, stimulation, but it's over-stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas paraxanthine, there is like a CNS stimulation component, central nervous system component to that. Yes, but we're also seeing that it improves, like nitric oxide increases by 50% to the brain. Dopamine up 50%. Again, serotonin, acetylcholine. So we see like focus, mood boost, productivity go up. We see BDNF increase, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is associated with neuroplasticity. And like I said, we see glutathione and catalase. Glutathione is the master antioxidant for the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very key. And we see oxidative stress go down to the brain. And you're seeing beta amyloid plaque get reduced, which is associated with Alzheimer's. Dopamine is associated with Parkinson's. If I was to talk to you about all the ways that the brain ages, it would be reduced neuroplasticity. It would be dopamine, BDNF going down, neuroplasticity going down, blood flow going down, oxidative stress going up. Literally, paraxanthine is reversing all of those. And we have a study that's coming out soon with e-gamers, with like Super Smash Brothers. It's been taking about 2 years to complete. But what we see is that with caffeine, we took some early results to file patents. With caffeine, we see diminishing results over time. And that makes sense, like we talked about. With paraxanthine, we're seeing with continued use, they get better and better and better performance-wise. And as far as like cognitive resilience. Why? Because I believe it's healing the brain and improving brain function over time. So where Michael Pollan essentially in Caffeine talks about caffeine as like a come at a cost ingredient, paraxanthine is not. You're getting the benefits and it's improving your brain.
Yeah, long-term benefits.
That's like the win-win-win.
Okay. Jeez.
I thought that the study you guys also published with the athletes,
Mm-hmm.
there's a study they published with a group of athletes where they sit a test and then they go and do a 10K and they come back and do a test. And the athletes who had paraxanthine made a decrease in the number of errors that they made by 10%, I think, or maybe it was just above 10%. And the athletes who consumed caffeine increased the number of errors by 22%.
Yeah,
so you've got this 30% delta between them.
Yeah, is
right?
massive.
And that's in an acute setting, right? Like whatever the time it takes to run a 10K.
Damn.
Right. And so what we're believing is that the more exhausted you are, the more stressed you are physiologically, mentally, the greater the paraxanthine effects are going to be. So said differently, we really want to do studies with healthy humans that are not just 18 to 22-year-old college males, but me and you that are in our 50s, 60s, 70s. What does that look like where there's no like mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, but there's just natural age, right? And so my thoughts are we would see the results we're seeing with paraxanthine and all these tests probably dramatically improve even greater, like where we're going to see those results magnified because we have more oxidative stress. We have more, need for neuroplasticity or blood flow to the brain or, some of these things that are naturally easy for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I'm curious, just thinking about this and kind of my own journey, spending 18 years as a trader in Chicago. And in that time, drank myself a lot of coffee, didn't eat particularly well, tremendous amount of stress. Learned how to deal with it better in the later years, but in the early years, not so great with that. And then pile on top of that, maybe 10 years into that career, getting heavy into fitness, in particular CrossFit. And so my internal system, particularly my adrenals, my cortisol is still dog shit. I'm just curious because I rode it hard for a long time. Be curious what the benefits would be. And maybe that's a different part of the body that it doesn't, I'm sure the brain has some governance over that stuff, or maybe a lot. I don't know. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, like, have you explored any of that? Do we have any ways to understand how that may benefit that?
We're not seeing the impact on heart rate, blood pressure, and all the typical side effects like brain fog, sleep disruption, anxiety / jitters. Just like, again, going back to that idea of frazzle, like that. We've come to know caffeine and what we think is stimulation as like this, stimulation with like this dirtiness to it. And we think that's how it is.
Totally.
It doesn't have to be like that. And there's some people, like, maybe on the first try, they might be like, well, I'm not getting all these side effects, so I'm not feeling anything. And there are occasionally people that are like that, but I would challenge.
I'm not jittery. This isn't working.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel all fucked up.
Exactly. And it's,
you have to unlearn, really.
This is an unlearned moment, folks. Bookmark this, Linz.
I would, in my psychedelic realm, I would go, I would say, like, how else does that show up in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Like where, you're used to being stimulated in an abusive way,
Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Talk about a podcast in and of itself.
I mean, I don't mean to call you out or anything.
No, you fucking read me like a book. Wow. Yeah.
No, you've done a good job unlearning all the things I think that, you said in your, well, we all do in your past life. I mean, dude, at the end of the day, like, I love what you're saying and doing. Like, I grew up like very sick, morbidly obese, lots of surgeries, brain tumors, all kinds of things. People don't want to hear from the guy who had it easy and has had a six-pack his whole life on how to lose weight. They want to hear from the guy that had to have the hero's journey.
Correct.
So, your path, just from what I'm hearing, is the path that people want to hear.
As is yours. And it's just like and I think that's an important thing. I love that concept of the wounded healer. It's like, the shit that I've gone through is different than the shit that you've gone through. And so I feel comfortable speaking on those things. I am not going to tell people how to go from 300 pounds to 200. Now, I could give you some thoughts on what might work. I haven't lived that journey. I've lived the guy who never felt like he was enough and overstimulated because I felt like I had to be on at all times, no matter what it was, performing. And you talk about your psychedelic experience and how beneficial and eye-opening and how important that is to you. I mean, I had I've had a handful of experiences over the last 6 or 7 years, but I had my first ayahuasca experience within the last year. I'll keep it very vague just to protect those who were involved and whatever. But I don't know if you've had this experience, but I couldn't believe what I learned in the 2-week dieta. And so for people who don't know, you're kind of prepping your body for receiving the medicine. And so for 2 weeks, you get rid of caffeine, you get rid of sugar, you get rid of salt. I mean, it's just, you get rid of beef, you get rid of pork. There's all these things. Sex. Oh yeah. And we had to keep it going, obviously, through that week. It would have been a problem if I had sex during the week when my wife wasn't there. Anyway, it was like 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, good God. So you're abstaining from all these things to get your body prepared. And so in those 2 weeks where I didn't have caffeine, I didn't have the other stimulants, and there were a number of them, whether it's nicotine or, some kava kratom, like I had to let go of those. And it was remarkable to me how often I had the urge for one of those. And it was like the longer I had these urges, the more information came to me about what was that saying about me? Why did I feel the need to be on? And I got to go much deep. I've had those thoughts before, but in not being able to eject from that feeling and having to sit with it, it was like, oh, there was actually, when I got down to the very core of it, and this is before I took my first, drink of that wonderful tea, I realized that it was a matter of safety for me. I didn't feel safe when I was a kid. And so for me to be on meant that I was moving ahead. I was staying safe. And it could look like succeeding, achieving, whatever, but it was always being on and alert and not stagnant. And it's like, oh,
it also means you're not okay with who you are as a human being. You had to be the human doing. You had to be this altered version of yourself to be accepted.
Totally.
Right?
Such an identity wrapped up in that. And as much
there's
as you
dissonance
try to pull
in
away
that,
from
right?
it is. And so, I had a friend, I was actually texting with some friends last night and was talking about how I was going off of coffee and how I've been off some other things for 3 weeks. And he's like, I'm so amazed that like you can cut anything out cold turkey. No problem. You have the discipline to do that, but you don't seem to have the discipline to just have a little bit of this in moderation. And I said, I know, I've thought about that. And for me,
all or nothing.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's not about the moderation so much. It's that I need to understand why I feel like I need any of it. If it's really not benefiting me, ultimately benefiting me, and I'm not saying like having fun with friends, but I'm saying like on your own, like feeling like you got to be on. And so it's not about, again, having just a half a cup of coffee every day. It's like, what is it about that coffee? Because I know intuitively and probably, literally, it's not benefiting me. I don't get any boost from it. I do enjoy the ritual of it. So there's something there.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think the net is it's a negative effect for me. And so what's an alternative that will get me closer to feeling good, but not of total reliance on that, a dependency. And I think that's why it was so interesting. Last night I'm having this conversation and here we are today where maybe this is it for me. Maybe this is one of those things that, update checks that box for me, that I feel the alertness that I want to feel for a period of time, but I'm not on that train for the whole time I'm awake. Like I had one this morning instead of coffee at like 8:30. It's a little afternoon. I'm having one right now. I haven't felt any kind of weirdness at all. I just feel really present. I mean, this is the first podcast I've done in a couple of months, and I feel very much, a part of what's going on here. Now, typically, I would have other stimulants that get me a little more dialed in, and I feel no need for those right now, which is really encouraging.
Yeah. And going full circle, like back to what we were saying at the beginning with like the cognitive dissonance of taking something that is a come at a cost ingredient. And when you are using these things, like when you were on your dieta, which is Spanish for diet, but meaning you're cutting out things bigger than just food, that you're taking away these things so that you can be aware of their effect on you. And it's like when we go through a journey and we learn the lessons, but we don't integrate and make the changes, there's dissonance there too, right? Like where it could actually do more damage, where now we're clear on this behavior is not healthy for us, or this relationship or whatever it is not healthy for us. But if we don't change it, what's the impact of that? Because now you can't even complain you can't even say that there's ignorance, right?
Right.
Now you know.
Now you know.
And now you're just sweeping it under the rug.
And that's where the shame
that's going to play out.
in.
Shame and guilt and the whole,
Yes.
like that whole spiral, right? And so what you're talking about with the caffeine, knowing that, and again, 81% of the population is having caffeine and wants to consume less. Think about that dissonance, right? Like, you know, it's not good for you. Then why are you doing it? And you have to like rationalize, and like you're literally lying to yourself. You're not even honest with yourself. You're creating like this whole story where you're like, well, here's why I do it. And, you know, I need to, well, just today. And, you know, how are you going to be honest in other parts of your life, right? I mean, this is like a lie that 81% of the planet is living.
Yeah. With this one compound.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a very much an eye opener, not just caffeine, but other things that have fallen in that category for me. And it's been a tremendous opportunity to learn, to unlearn, if I'm willing to really have the courage and be totally honest with myself. And I would say that in this season right now, I finally got to the point where I'm ready for that, because it's been like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? How many times are you going to go through this cycle where you kind of fall off the wagon, and, you know, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that, you know, I'm doing different things to kind of boost my energy and to be more on, but I know it. You know, and what's always been fascinating to me is when I've come off these stimulants, my baseline energy, it doesn't take long for it to recover. And then it's just like, fuck, I feel good. I like this version of me. I don't particularly love the version that is fiending for, and it becomes a fucking whole stupid. It's like, what can I get my hands on to just give myself a little boost? Sometimes it's like fucking 5 minutes. It's like, that can't be worth it. Yeah. You know, and I love that whole concept that you said this is come at a cost. I've never thought about it that way in that particular language, but it's a beautiful way. Yes, this is not without a cost. And so it's really interesting now to start to look at things through that lens. And sometimes the cost is you're willing to pay that price, and that's okay. But to just have the architecture to look at things through that lens is pretty interesting.
Well, and if you think about like, there's probably that like one day where it's like, look, I got 4 hours of sleep. My baby was up all night crying. You know, I was running late. I've got like a presentation to do at work. Like, things are just crazy. Like, look, I just need to get through this day. There's caffeine in front of me. Boom, I got to do it. That makes sense. Like, everyone has to do something like that come at a cost. Like, sometimes you got to pay the Pied Piper or whatever it is, right?
Totally.
But think about how that differs from, at some point that becomes, well, just, you know, I got an hour less sleep, or, you know, I'm just struggling because it's 3 p.m. and, you know, I need to make it to 5 p.m. or whatever it is. And then it's like every couple days, every day, then it's even on the weekends. It's now part of your life.
It happens so easily. You just slip into it. It's just like you give up an inch every day, every moment. You just give in a little bit. And before you know it, you're like, who the fuck am I? Like, really, I've gone through periods where I was like, I have no idea who I am. I'll just say sober.
Right.
And it's like, it's like when I get to that point and I have that realization, it's like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be 5 years from now. I don't want to live the next 5 years like this. So like, I need to make a change. And so I've been able to make that change, generally cold turkey. It's like, when am I going to be willing to not go back into that type of, experience? And I don't know the answer to that.
It's very similar to the story that's going on right now with Gen Z and alcohol, like where they don't feel a need for alcohol anymore. And you have places that are bars where they don't serve alcohol. They have CBD drinks and Update or, whatever, these things that like raise your vibration. And they don't feel a need to be on that. They don't feel like a need to explain why they're not drinking. Like, it's no longer something that's productive for them. It is a come at a cost ingredient, clearly. I have a drink on occasion, but
Sure.
like I'm aware of, the impact of it physiologically. And so it's a similar idea that like, alcohol is somewhat trending out. People are thinking about, hey, I can socialize without it. I like who I am without it. I don't need to get sloppy. I don't need to, have a hangover. I don't need to have all these calories have this impact on my body. I think the same's going to happen with caffeine, where there's going to be a great awakening for like a long time. Like that was like our night and day, right? We survived on caffeine. We were grinding. And then at night we needed to figure out how to like bring it down, and it was alcohol. And now we're going to be doing cold plunges and saunas and, red light and blue light and, having paraxanthine and, CBD. And, there's going to be like very different decisions being made because we're entering the age of Aquarius or what have you, right? So,
well, they say that the alcohol alternative space is growing at an incredible rate.
Massive. An Update could be a big part of that.
Hell yeah. Let's hope so. Now, I'm curious, where does decaf coffee fit into the kind of spectrum of benefits and costs? Like are there metabolites that are in decaf that are harmful in a sense? You know what I mean? Or are there any left over? Because like, how do they decaffeinate beans or...
Yeah, the Swiss water method is probably like the kind of like gentlest. And that way leaves the least amount of caffeine. The kind of chemical method that's happening right now that the FDA has just stepped in on, like is taking a lot of heat that may be a carcinogen in the way that they process that. And it does leave some caffeine behind, like maybe 10% or something like that. So it's not like caffeine free. But I will say like what's like different when you look at studies with coffee versus caffeine, you do see coffee has polyphenols that are healthy. Like there's chlorogenic acid, there's trigonelline, like these compounds that are in there that can vasodilate, that can be anti-aging in general, that are negating some of the negative effects of caffeine itself. So when we just have isolated caffeine in supplements and energy drinks or whatever, it's not the same. Like another example is like in green tea that you have L-theanine, which smooths out the effect of caffeine. It's kind of a relaxing anxiogenic agent. And then you also have EGCG, which is a polyphenol, which improves blood flow. So you have some things in there that are going to, again, kind of like ease the effect of caffeine again. So when you're having like natural sources of caffeine, I wouldn't say it's exactly the same. And when I say natural sources, I mean in the whole plant, so that's a different experience than caffeine anhydrous, pure caffeine.
Okay. All right. I want to shift gears a little bit. Let's get Daniel back into this conversation, because Update was your baby, and you and Shawn met. We'll get into that. And then Shawn had this special molecule, would you call it?
Sure.
Yeah. But I'd love to hear that origin story. And really, you're from Sydney, you were in finance there, you moved to New York. Just love to have, you share your kind of origin story and then how Update came to be.
So I moved to New York about 5 years ago, 5.5 now, from Sydney, Australia. And I grew up in, I don't know, I like to call it a bubble, right? Where your life is kind of planned out for you. You go to, your kindergarten, elementary school, high school. It's all the same group of people the whole time who I love to death for what it's worth. And I wouldn't trade the experience. And then it's like, okay, well, you're going to study really hard in high school and you're going to go to one of the top 2 universities and you're going to study medicine, finance, or law. You're going to go there for 3 years or 5 years, however long the degree is. Then you're going to go work in a bank, a law firm, or become a doctor and spend, the rest of your life doing that. And that was it. And you would all live in the same handful of suburbs that are next to each other. And then you would have kids and the kids would go to the same school, same process, and rinse and repeat. And I think there's something very special about that. But I think what it did was really, and I did that path for what it's worth. I did well in high school. I went to university. I studied, finance. I went into banking for 5 years. But what it did was really inhibit what you thought was possible to do. I think we grew up and I had this conversation with my parents where it's, they didn't give you insight into, hey, well, maybe you can take a risk into a startup. Maybe there's this whole industry called tech that might be interesting to look at and get into. It's like, no, it's like, finance, law, medicine, very traditional. And so after taking this path, drinking lots of coffee on the path for what it's worth, I decided at one point to save up enough money to resign from work, buy a one-way ticket to New York, and have fun and explore what's possible. And I decided if I enjoy staying there, I have to work out how to make a living. And then we decided, let's start a company, a couple of friends and I, and we came up with the idea of Update. And I think where the idea really came from is, energy drinks were something that I was never a fan of. In fact, I don't think I've ever had, we were talking about this earlier. The only time I've consumed a full can of an energy drink other than Update was like a Red Bull at a nightclub, over a decade ago. I've never drunk an energy drink other than that. And I think they just have this inherent stigma around them that you would never feel comfortable walking around with them. If you're on the trading floor or in a bank, imagine walking in with a Monster or a Red Bull, you'd probably get a slap on your wrist and asked to leave. They tasted like sickly sweet. They're filled with copious amounts of caffeine. Red Bull launches, it's caffeine and sugar. Monster launches a few years later, more caffeine, more sugar. And the narrative is like, how much caffeine can you stick into a can, right? And like, who the hell wants to drink this, right? You want the product, you want a product to be healthy for you, I think. And none of these appealed to me. But what was exciting is that we saw this opportunity where it's, our lives are so different to what they were when Red Bull launched.
Yeah. How long was it? Has it been 20 years?
They launched in 87.
Holy shit.
Yeah, in Europe, but it got popular here late 90s.
Yeah, I could say late 90s. That makes sense.
And I think like when Red Bull launched, and granted, like it was very much in the nightlife scene, but even think about, we spoke about this earlier today, like coffee, all of these products were all about like, hey, we can help you wake the fuck up. And your life is you wake up, you go to work 9 to 5, you come home, you prepare dinner, you go to sleep, and you rinse and repeat. And people wanted that wake the fuck up energy. But to your point about it comes at a cost. You put up with the crash, you put up with all the other side effects caffeine has to offer because there was no other solution. And what we saw was that our lives are really changing. You live in this world where, we're doing several different things in any one day. Very few people have a proper 9 to 5 job. And this idea of consuming a product that makes you feel energized for 6 hours and then crash doesn't fit in with our schedules anymore. You want to wake up, you want to take something, go do your best exercise, come home, unwind, get ready for work, go into work, switch on again. And then when you're finished with work, you want to come home and unwind. And there was nothing that really gave you that option. So we thought, what if we can create this? What if we can create something that um, allows you to switch on when you want, switch on in a meaningful way. So not just, some, hey, take the, and not to diss on any mushrooms or nootropics or adaptogens, but not to say, hey, take this powder or this mushroom, you're going to feel great for, an hour and then, take it again. It's like, what if we can do this in a real meaningful way? People are used to caffeine and the experience it gives them. I, for one, love a coffee every morning. And, you can't deviate too far away from that experience. So what if we can give you that utility you want, but within this new life that we live? So instead of it lasting 6 hours and crashing, it's just for a handful of hours. You don't notice the crash. And then when you want to switch off, you're switched off. And when you need to switch on again, you just consume this again. And the problem was we weren't scientists and had no idea how the hell to do this.
Yeah.
I literally built a matrix on, like an Excel spreadsheet where you have at the time, and I'm not a biohacker, right? So I'm like, how the hell are we going to do this? I built a matrix, and at the time you have like, Joe Rogan is touting Alpha Brain. You have Tim Ferriss has like another product he's touting, and the whole list of these people and all their products and all the ingredients down the side, and like, putting an X next to, the ingredient and the product and seeing what are the most commonly used ingredients. I go and order them all off Amazon, and I like, then go and buy all this science gear just because I figure you should have science gear.
Of course, right.
To mix it together. And I'm like, in my tiny little New York studio with a little magnetic spinner and putting powders in. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And of course, like, it tastes like shit and doesn't work.
So the idea was, just simplify it, like take an Alpha Brain, make it a drink type of thing.
Yeah. Like if everyone's saying how great Alpha Brain is, how great Qualia is, how great this, how great that.
Qualia. I just haven't felt anything from those things.
Why not see all these ingredients and see if we can put them in a drink. And if everyone's saying, these work so well, surely they should work so well. And we tried to do this and it didn't work. And then I, had moments where I would take these supplements and I would kind of take them in the recommended dose, 2x that, 3x, and I didn't really feel anything. And the trick with energy is if you want energy, if you want to feel switched on, it needs to be acute. You need to feel it now. You don't want to be told, hey, take this for 3 weeks. You're going to feel great afterwards.
No, right.
Like that, that's like the one thing you
no
don't
one has
want,
that kind of
right?
patience.
No one has the patience. We're completely changed. And so went down a rabbit hole and came across Shawn, who, I actually was introduced to him through Ben, who talks about him as one of the top formulators in the world.
Yep.
And, reached out to Shawn and said, hey, like, this is the idea, help build this product with us.
How long had you been in the weeds with it at that point?
Probably about 3 months.
Okay.
And we just said to him, like, help build this product with us if it's interesting to you. And I guess he thought it was interesting, but at the time he still like gate kept paraxanthine for a few more months.
Sure.
And
how long had you had that kind of in your quiver?
I had been working on it. It's been in my quiver for about 10 years, but it's, with a lot of these ingredients, you have to do the intellectual property work. You have to protect it. I have been burned on many ingredients that like I talk about it, I have someone try it, and then it's just out on the market. I actually brought raspberry ketones out and I watched that go like thermonuclear. Not only did it go huge, it went huge because it was cheap, it was effective, it was new. I saw it in probably 30, 40, 50 supplements over the course of about 2 years. Then Dr. Oz mentioned it. And I would walk in like a CVS or Walgreens and there was like 100 products with it. I'm like, oh my God, I made $0 off that. Zero. And so I've learned that lesson. So I was talking to Daniel, yes. But, I was working with my team of scientists, 2 German scientists, Dr. Ralph Jaeger, Martin Purpura. I was also working with my partner in China who does all the manufacturing. By the way, it's a full GMP facility. Like they work with pharmaceutical companies. And all the pieces were there and we were doing all the studies. We were filing for GRAS, which again, generally recognized as safe. So you're doing toxicology work. A lot of work goes in, probably just on that part is 3 or 4 years before I can even really talk about it. And we have enough data And that
Whoa.
money spent is probably, in this case, like close to $5 million that was spent.
Oh my gosh.
So,
that's
loose
massive.
lips sink ships,
Oh,
as they say.
yeah.
So I was like, a little reluctant at first. Obviously, I work with a lot of formulations, a lot of companies, a lot of ingredients. And I've worked on a ton of beverages, done many energy drinks. So I was working with Daniel, going through the process. But then I hit a point where it's like, yeah, all these are kind of coming up short. I was going to work with T-Creen and Dynamine, my other ingredients. We were talking about those.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, it was like, speaking of dissonance, I was like, oh God, I want to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think
then eventually it was like, all right,
well, you
I'm
had to build trust.
Yeah.
You had to build trust, but we also didn't, I think a lot of times, and maybe we've like shot ourselves in the foot here, but a lot of times when you're creating a beverage, right? Like a beverage is a really unattractive industry to be working in, right?
Hell yeah.
You're talking about a product that only works if you sell it at scale.
Yeah.
You can only sell it for, max $3-4, and that's on the really expensive end.
Yeah.
And think about how much it costs to ship a product to you, and then think about what it costs to make. So everyone's focused on like, hey, how can I make this energy drink at the lowest possible cost? Give me caffeine, give me sucralose, one and done. You've got that for, a few cents per can. And I think coming into this industry without any of that experience, I think the naivety probably has helped here.
Mm-hmm.
But, with Shawn, it was like that there's no limit to how much we can spend building this. We just need to create the best freaking product ever. And we want it to be objectively the best, healthiest energy drink on the market. And we didn't want to use any artificial sweeteners. We only wanted to use ingredients that were in there, because they needed to be in there and not because we needed to tell anyone this is in the product.
Okay.
No feather dusting of ingredients. If an ingredient's in there, it better be at the like clinically proven dose. Otherwise it's not in there. And,
wow.
I think there's very few companies in the energy drink space that I think probably take that rigor and methodology of science, pharma, whatever you want to call it, and apply it to energy drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably, not to speak for you, but that was probably like an exciting thing to then say, hey, like it makes sense. Why don't we try this new ingredient?
Did you have any vision for how you might want to bring it to market before you met Daniel? Like what delivery system or?
Yeah, well, Daniel, this was the first product to market with paraxanthine. It's the first drink with paraxanthine. And it actually helped us because it's a food product, nutrition facts. It actually was something like a step that we needed to do to actually justify it as a supplement. Like technically per FDA law, like you need to release it, so that's why we did GRAS work, toxicology work. We had it approved for food and beverage. And then this was our kind of showcase of here it is as a food or beverage. And then that led us to being able to sell it as a supplement. So that was actually a kind of a case study, if you will. And this was what I had in mind. Yeah, like absolutely, like supportive nutrients that are nootropic, that are healthy. Daniel will tell you, like, it was quite difficult with the team about like what goes in, what goes out. Everyone is very protective of this ingredient because, again, going back to the horror stories with ephedrine, synephrine, caffeine, nicotine, whatever, like all these substances, pseudoephedrine, like there's horror stories with all of them. And it could be thrown in that category erroneously. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to take chances. Like we didn't want it like combined with alcohol. We didn't want it, like, would it go well with alcohol? Sure. I've tried it. He's tried it. Like it would go great.
Sure.
But we're very cognizant of how we're putting it out into the world. We want it to be healthy and supportive and, not relate to cognitive dissonance, to really be something that is not a come at a cost ingredient or product.
I have so many questions. Just so I understand, I don't quite understand how this all works, but if I want to purchase paraxanthine, do I need to go through you and your team? Is there other, like, how does that work?
Yeah, not anymore.
Is it like how, what's...
There's a distributor now, a global distributor that we've handed it off to called TSI. Like they make HMB. I don't know if you ever use that supplement that supports muscle. They have other ingredients like PKTP, but they're a global distributor and they're selling Infinity with their sales team doing all that stuff.
And you get a piece of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it does come from you, just not directly from you. There's a middleman that, I'm just saying how long does that last for you that you kind of have that patent protection on sales?
I think the distribution is separate from the patent protection, right?
Yeah, patent protection can be like 20 years. But yeah.
Okay.
They're like the middleman that will help, instead of me having to hound Shawn every 5 minutes, hey, Shawn, send me more.
Yeah.
I go through them and they're the middleman. And then these guys can decide which companies they want them to sell to. Or not.
I like staying in this creator phase, like very much like the CEO that's like the startup CEO versus that's different than like, when the private equity brings in like, whatever guy that's like been at the CPG and like he's really good at like kind of refining and growing the company in a stable way, like versus like the wildness of startup, right? Two totally different CEOs, right? So for me, I like to be a creator. I like to work on branding. I like to work on new ingredients. I like to work on new flavors and formulas and formats. And I like tinkering and toying with all these ideas and coming out with products and ingredients. And for me, doing that kind of stuff, that's not my jam.
So if I wanted to create a product that had paraxanthine and let's say alcohol, do I need to get your approval to do that? Or can I go to the middleman and purchase from him, combine it, and try to sell it?
We wouldn't approve it.
Okay, but you need to approve it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's important now.
Yeah.
So there could be a time in the long future once this is like...
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if there's, like a 10-year runway and maybe, I don't know.
Sure. Okay. Okay, so
in the interim, you're stuck buying these and mixing it with alcohol.
It's way better than a White Claw.
Yeah. Okay, so you're still formulating though, right? You're like what? So you're master formulator, but Daniel, you're still working on getting the paraxanthine and now you're putting it with these different, like, how is this working for you as someone who doesn't have a back? You've got a deep study in it, in what you've been doing and the experience, but like, how much are you leaning on Shawn? Like, what does this whole process look once you get the green light for the paraxanthine?
Sure. So, what we did was essentially together work on what the formula should be. Shawn, I would love to call him like the CFO, the Chief Formulator Officer.
Yeah.
But for lack of a better word, he's really, we've spent countless hours at different flavor houses. You essentially outsource a flavor house. They create flavors around the product. We would go there, we would play around with them. Shawn would be telling them more of this, less of this, to try and make the product taste good. And then, you put the product out there. I think the passion that I have is knowing and understanding that there's always going to be people that don't like the product, don't like the taste, don't like the flavors. And also having this understanding that the product will never be perfect, but can always and should always be improved upon. And so like we have this relentless pursuit of like trying to make the product as great as it can be. So, we put out one formula and then a year later, Shawn and I are back in the flavor house working on the second formula, which is what we've got now. And then, we're 6 months after that. And downstairs here, I have, a sample of what the third formula might be.
Yeah.
And constantly, looking at how we can make this appeal to more and more people, listening to the customers, tweaking it based on mass feedback. And I don't think we're ever going to stop. We'll sit here in a year from now and this will look different and taste slightly different, or hopefully taste a lot better. And then a year from that, the same.
CQI. Like I went to business school undergrad. I did marketing undergrad at Babson, and it's like continual
nice.
quality improvement, right?
Yeah.
Like Lee Iacocca, like it's that idea, like you keep iterating. Someone else is going to catch up if you don't do that work,
Sure.
right? So we're always trying to be our own greatest critic and stay ahead by iterating.
Interesting. Not by adding a bunch more SKUs, by like continuing to refine this
Continuing
product.
to refine. And
Potentially adding more SKUs, sure, but like that's not the goal. Is to have like 5 Hour Energy has 1,000 different flavors now, right? Like continuing.
We'll have more flavors, but I think paraxanthine being a new ingredient, us being the first brand in the world to ever use it, there's so much learning that comes with how to formulate the product, which, as amazing as Shawn is, until you actually do it, you don't know, right? And so, then we stacked on, unfortunately for Shawn, a bunch of other parameters. We needed to make sure that it was only naturally flavored and naturally sweetened and didn't have sugar and was in a smaller can, so it's not diluted as much by water. And all of these things just add complexity to trying to make the product taste good. And I think,
sure. Yeah, the dilution probably is nice. You get a little more water.
Nice, right? Like you think about caffeine. Caffeine is bitter. There's a reason why Celsius, Red Bull, Bang, Monster all use copious amounts of sugar or sucralose and aspartame. It's because they're trying to cover that up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason they all go for like artificial flavors. It's because they're trying to cover that up. And for us, it was really important to create a product that we would want to drink for ourselves, that would be objectively the healthiest product on the market. And so we couldn't do that. And, Shawn had to navigate all those complexities. And I think he's done an epic job.
Yeah. Well, now you guys, you guys have shared some with me. You've sent me some. I bought some online. So there's obviously a big e-commerce footprint right now, but you've rolled out into some smaller chains like Sun Life, and then here in Dallas with Alive and Well. But can you share what else is coming on with distribution?
So right now, as you said, like primarily we're selling the product on Amazon through our website, drinkupdate.com. And then we're starting to expand into retail. So we're in some retailers like Erewhon in Mother's Market in LA, Alive and Well, Sun Life Organics in Texas. In New York, we're in a handful of grocery stores in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And then we're about to launch in Central Market here in Texas in all their stores. That should, I don't know when this podcast is being released.
Probably within the next 3 weeks, I'd say 2 weeks.
Okay, so by the time this is released,
before the end of September,
coincide with our launch at Central Market.
Hell yeah!
So we'll be doing that, which will be really exciting. And
how many doors is that?
They only have 10 doors, but I to my knowledge, those 10 doors are bigger than, and get more foot traffic than the 200 little small bodegas and delis in New York.
Massive, yeah. Their stores are incredible. I love their stores.
And then we'll be launching with the Vitamin Shop nationwide come January.
Damn.
And a handful of other chains starting to hit shortly thereafter.
And what's that experience been like for you, someone who's never done that? Right, I'm talking to Daniel here, like knocking on those doors, getting in. I mean, you all have a relationship with Michael Swale at Alive and Well. Sure, that's easy, right? Those are a couple doors. We're getting into Central Market eventually, obviously, like a Whole Foods, whatever. This seems to pair well with that. What has that process been like for you?
It's been a real challenge. I think there's two elements to it. One, the whole process was new to me. So understanding how it works. In theory, every one of these large retailers has buyers for different products. So there'll be like the energy drink buyer, the water buyer, the toilet paper buyer. And you have to work out who they are. They constantly change. You then have to work out how to get in touch with them. And of course, you're one of 1,000 other brands trying to get in touch with them.
Yep.
If you're lucky to get in touch with them and if they're willing to accept samples, you have one person who's going to try it, right? It'd be funny if you're the toilet paper buyer trying samples. I wonder how that goes down. But one person is trying the product. I've never used that.
I have an idea how that might go down.
You have one person trying your product and you're, for better or for worse, your life is in their hands and you hope it goes well. And then, it takes several months to work out how to finally tee up distribution and get them the product. So I think that's really challenging. And the other part of it is I'm naturally someone who is more introverted, more shy. I'm not like a great salesperson, right? I can't talk shit. And if I am, I burst out laughing, right?
Yeah.
Like you can catch me like this. So having to, try and sell something comes unnatural to me. And so that's been an interesting thing to
It's gotta help that you fucking believe in the product.
That helps. And I think I'm almost.
Could you imagine trying to sell this if you didn't believe in it?
Yeah. And I think where it actually has worked out well is like in many instances I've been maybe too transparent and told the people too much about what we're doing. And I think that's actually now worked in our favor because they're like, hey, like we trust this guy, and when he's ready, he's going to tell us.
Dude, there's got to be an authenticity with you when you go in there. You're not a sales guy. You're a guy with a product, and you're like, look, I think you'll dig this. And you answer the questions with honesty. Yeah. So that's probably uncomfortable and different for them, but ultimately, fuck. Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so you've got potentially new flavors coming out.
Yeah, I think
that's what's downstairs right now. Those are new flavors.
Stick pack powders coming out shortly as well.
So those will be coming out.
Those will be coming out hopefully by the end of the year.
Great. Those are great for travel. As we were saying
earlier. The Kardashians are drinking it.
They are.
Yeah, we. It was funny. We.
Look at you.
I get little notifications on my phone.
Wait, I did see that somewhere. Was that on Instagram or something?
Yeah.
That's where I saw it.
It was funny. Last Saturday night, I get like a little notification on my phone, and I can see if people buy on the website and how many items people buy. Normally it's 1, 2, 3. I never look at all of it. When someone buys like 5, 6, or 7 items, you kind of are like, who the hell is buying 5, 6, or 7 items at a time? Anyway, it turned out it was them. I was like, wow, they bought it off the website.
Yeah, dude.
The whole family's drinking it.
That was
it's
pretty
crazy.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I was just telling Daniel that I was doing a bit of research and was on your website and looking at who your kind of customers are, like the kind of well-known people. And Kygo was on there. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know Kygo, but I'm really good friends with manager Miles Shear. And he and I spend the summers up in Idaho together. And so I texted him, I was like, oh, dude, looks like Kygo, drinks this product. He goes, dude, we were like one of the first investors. Like, we love this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, if that guy's behind it and investing, believing in you guys, like that's a nice little feather in the cap.
Yeah.
As I was saying with Daniel, I've been so amazed that like his ability, like his just sense, he's like a savant. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whatever I can gain from him, it's just like, I'm all ears. So it's very cool that you guys seem to be bringing in the right people, but you have a product that people can get behind and they have their own experience with it. Is something, for a lot of products I've found, like, I can't tell if it works or not, and I think given the fact that you guys have been on your own journeys, you probably subscribe to this kind of biology of belief. Like, if I believe this thing works, then it's going to work for me. Mm-hmm. Now, with Update, I can feel it working. So that helps me.
Well, that's it. You just need to try it, right? Like everyone resonates with the idea that they don't want to feel overstimulated. They don't want to get anxious. They want to feel focused when they want it.
Yes.
And, so the idea resonates with people. And then if someone's skeptical or is unsure, you're just like, hey, try it.
Experiential.
Because you experience it, right? And within the first 10 minutes, you're like, whoa, I'm locked in. And we have people, you're talking about your past in trading, right? Or when I was in banking, we have a bunch of officers who buy the product from us, both in finance, in law, even doctors. And what we consistently hear is this feedback where it's like, people will tell us, and I mean, we can't use this as marketing, unfortunately, but people will tell us it's like Adderall in a can, right? Like these people in these offices drink this because it switches them on for like 3-4 hours and they don't crash. And we hear this like time and time again. And so, maybe in another life, this is what you'll be having next time you start your trading firm.
Yes.
But it's really quite remarkable. We hear stories of people who say, child who takes Adderall and they're now giving this to them. The child is over 18.
Yeah.
And they're able to cut down on that because this really helps, navigate their ability to focus where there's no other product that does that. So everything's so overstimulating and so distracting.
What maybe brings some tension for you around the whole kind of enterprise of this? I mean, there's a lot to be excited about, right? We can get into that, but like, what are the things that maybe keep you up at night?
Too many to list, but no, I think one of the biggest challenges we have, put aside, like, yes, there's always going to be some people that don't like the product, or people that do, but at the end of the day, you call yourself a startup and you need to be scrappy. But then you go to the retailer and you're like, hey, I need to be sitting next to Red Bull and Celsius. And by the way, they're going to spend $100 million each with you this year, and I'm not.
Yeah.
But you've still got to compete against them. So it's like, how do you really break through the noise in a way that is effective? And I think that's something that we're really doubling down on, trying to navigate. But I think it's challenging because it doesn't matter how clever you want to be if they're going to throw $100 million at the at the table. It's like, good luck. But these things take time, and I think like we're going for it, and we're not going to give up. And I think the product really works, and the people getting behind the product are not the people getting behind a Celsius and a Red Bull.
Yeah.
And I think that will speak for itself.
I mean, when the product costs like 20x, like you're seeing like them throw their money at, if it's Bang, like bikinis and boobs, if you will, and all these crazy parties. And Red Bull is about like extreme athletes, and, same with Monster, and like all, like they're spending, just flooding the market with all kinds of money to promote. But like at the end of the day, is it a good drink? Like, what if you put the money actually into the formulation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a completely different path than what you.
It's a completely different path.
I mean, like something that kind of.
It's hard. You're playing a different game.
Yeah, I think like something that backs that up, which is kind of interesting, is Monster for a long time would sponsor all these athletes and musicians, right? And you would go to a concert, you'd see them having Monster and drinking it off the can, putting it on the floor. Anyway, it comes out like that the Monster that they're drinking is actually called like Tool Water. And it's just water, right? Because these guys don't want to be drinking this stuff.
Fuck yeah.
Right? So they have commercialized it to look like they can, but inside is just water.
Of course.
And then of course Liquid Death comes out and has popularized, like water in a can, and done it in such an effective way that now Monster commercialized their Tool Water. And you can buy just water in a Monster can. But like that speaks volumes. The fact that they were giving them water because that's what they wanted and not the actual product. I think like makes a big difference.
It's I'm kind of fascinated because I've been involved with a lot of startups and CPG products and some beverages. And so just so interested to hear from y'all, like what the different steps are, and I think as much as I've been involved with these other products, I haven't really gone that deep, with the exception of maybe one in particular, but I love hearing this journey, and it's such a unique product, and the way you had this almost like there's probably some serious frustration because you're like, this product is fucking so much better than everything else.
True. Yeah.
How do you all not see this?
Right.
And you're drinking all this shit when you could be drinking this and it's so much better for you. But it's like, you've got to have the patience because it's the long game.
It's the long game. And you do little things like, in New York, I rent a van from Enterprise and I like stock it with cases. You drive around to the grocery store, you go in there, you stock the shelf. You're like, hey, I'm stocking the shelf next to Celsius. They have like 10 cans in a row and I have 4. I'm going to push their one aside and put mine in front.
Yes.
You got to do these things to try and get people to listen.
You have to. Like
I said earlier, like there's this relentless pursuit of wanting to get the product perfect, but understanding it will never be perfect. Part of the name update is all around this like Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, where it's like continuous improvement. And before we actually named the product, I was on a trip and I was in Tokyo and I was there and experiencing this. I'm someone that loves food. And so I experienced this through the chefs and how they work, and just completely in awe around it. And I think taking that philosophy to update is what we're trying to do here. So when it comes to the flavors, when it comes to the branding, it's like, we know it's not going to be for everyone. There's we were talking about this the other day, updates for people who want to like focus and get shit done. And there's people who want to be complacent, and that's fine. It's not going to be for everyone, but for the people that it's for, we're going to constantly work to improve the product. We launched the first version of the product about 18 months ago. Like I said, a year later, we reformulated it and launched version 2. Shawn's been hard at work working on different sweetener systems, flavor systems, and all of this is now getting incorporated into version 3. Which hopefully will launch early next year. And then, from like a flavor point of view, I think these are all beautiful colors. And I think you can imagine like different colors that will come out next. And then there'll be flavors to that. TBD on what the flavors will be. Part of it might be up to you, depending on what you think downstairs.
Okay.
But we'll decide what new flavors to launch. And then shortly in a few months, we'll have stick packs. So we'll keep expanding from there.
Quick technical aspect here. The alpha GPC, which is the most bioavailable, best performing form of choline that increases acetylcholine associated with deep focused work, as well as phosphatidylcholine associated with brain phospholipids. This form of alpha GPC that's going into this formulation is the only form of choline on the market that has shown acute benefit in a new study that's about to release. And that's why we put it in the formula. Meaning that all the other forms of choline can take weeks or months. We have shown that this form of choline, it's a very concentrated alpha GPC, a non-soy one, shows acute benefit. So in that first use, you are seeing greater memory, greater focus. Add to that, what he was talking about is a blend that I've been working on for 2 years, Sweet Vantage. It's a mix of stevia rhodiosides. So you might have heard of like Reb A. That's been around for several years. That's like a back-end sweetener. And if you go high in stevia to get that sweetness, you also get that back-end bitterness. There are other forms of these rhodiosides, Reb D, M, A, in certain ratios that we've been working out using what's called e-tongue tests. Like it's really involved testing to get the perfect ratio of front, middle, back sweetening so that the full flavor, like a roundness, is brought out without the aftertaste. Everyone talks about that, but that has not existed in a non-caloric sweetener, period, the end. This is an absolute breakthrough, basically on the level of paraxanthine. So, everything, like when I talk about like being iterative, and I love that he brought up Kaizen because that takes me back to Babson. Like at the time, like Lee Iacocca was God, and it was like, all that stuff, like with like the Japanese car companies were absolutely crushing us, and we had Chrysler and all those stories, right? But that's really like, that's why like there's the iterative challenge of like, how can we do better? How can we challenge ourselves to do better? And that's what this product is about. Like, even though the ingredients are already better, even though this demolishes all the other energy drinks on the market, how can we best ourselves? Like, Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant were who they were, not because they were competing like against like the other players in the NBA. Like they became the best because they were competing against the best version of themselves. And that's it. Like that, like at the end of the day, like, we have to talk about our competition, but our real competition is what is the best version of update we can come out with.
I love it. I love it. By the way, did you grow up in the Northeast?
Yeah.
Because I grew up in Maine.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Maine. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like Lisbon Falls, like Lewiston. My dad was in the Navy.
Fuck off. I grew up in Winthrop. I used to play hockey in Lewiston,
nice.
but I was going to say I used to drive down to Babson and play in a summer league called Hockey Night in Boston.
Yeah. So we moved from, I also lived out in Whidbey Island, which is Washington State. Again, this is Navy. So then we moved from, down like Lisbon Falls. And then we also moved to Lenox, which is like Western Mass, like Tanglewood.
I went to Amherst College. I used to drive through Lenox.
Yeah, my brother went to UMass.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's why I ended up going to Babson and then continued my schooling for biochemistry and dietetics and all that stuff.
Awesome. Sorry, a little side note.
Cool.
I mean, geez, I don't know. There's so much more we can talk about. We could certainly get into, I feel like the next conversation will get more into our plant medicine journey.
I would love to talk about that. I have a lot of supplement stacks around that. I have a lot of science around that. I have a history of depression and suicidal thoughts that I've worked my way through, and I'm very passionate about that topic.
Well, what do you mean you have kind of these formulations? Can we dig into that a little bit?
We can like have a prelude to the next episode.
Okay, let's do that. This is a little teaser. Absolutely.
If people demand it,
they will.
All right, people, are you listening? Please demand it.
Yeah, I demand it. So that's all we need.
So it's like pre, peri, post supplement stacks around journeys, be it like the different plant medicines or entheogens, as well as like microdoses. Things to enhance neuroplasticity, reduce anxiety, like anxiogenics, improve resilience, help bring neurotransmitters back online, be it like acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, et cetera, like how to do all those things. So there's a lot to it.
Are these commercially available going to be? They are.
Yeah, they are. There's actually a number of facilities that administer journeys that are using my protocols right now.
How would, say, someone listening right now get exposure to what these certain protocols are? Is there a way to, unless they go to one of these facilities?
No, for sure. Like they could definitely get the protocols. We have it, ShawnWells.com, my site.
Yep.
But I would love to, like, I feel like there's a lot of nuance to it that I would love to walk through again. I'm not just selling myself up on doing another episode because, again, there's different medicines, different people. Again, going back to bioindividuality. Another teaser I will give you is that like, it's not about men and women and me being 100 kilos, 220 pounds and a woman being, 100 pounds, 50 kilos or whatever it is. And like, oh, I should take twice as much. Mm-hmm. That is not the case. It's the state of your nervous system and whether you're in sympathetic fight, flight or freeze. And especially like, I was in ultra sympathetic. It sounds like you were that kind of personality.
I don't have
and it would take right. It would take like 5.5 grams plus the heart opener to like even get me into that space.
Yeah.
And so the depletion is different. Like, and the way I'm going to treat my body is different if I'm in that space versus like when I went to Nosara and I lived in Costa Rica and I was like digitally detoxed and, going to bed with the sunset and looking at the ocean and just like, like I was in a completely different space and 1 gram would put me in the same space that 5.5 grams used to.
Yes.
And so, and now there's a lot of people, a lot of facilitators doing different stacks. Like, again, like going back to heart openers, you might have MDMA, MDA, then go into psilocybin. Maybe that psilocybin's like ceremonial cacao. And then you might have Wachuma the next day, San Pedro to like kind of ground and like get in the right space for your nervous system. Again, helping your nervous system not be overwhelmed. So there's a lot to it. Like I'd really like to, it feels cavalier to just throw it out there without like really, there's a lot that I like to talk about because I do think they're powerful substances that have, they're catalysts for change. But at the same time, there is concern that I have with some of the people that are facilitating
Mm-hmm.
and what they're doing. And, I talk about like that, for example, like you have to feel safe in the space. I had a very close friend, like a best friend, recently go through a journey. She didn't tell me and she felt unsafe and she had a very bad experience.
Fuck.
And she's processing. And I believe everything is a lesson. Everything is learning. It's about like learning how to speak your truth, come out with like project your wants instead of suppressing that and people pleasing. Like it's throat chakra. You can go deep on this, right?
Yep.
A lot of us don't speak up and demand what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hold it against ourselves and the world that we're not getting that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's lessons in every journey, period.
For sure.
But I would prefer that someone feel safe, be safe, especially if it's your first journey. Like I've done more than 100 journeys. I'm in a space where I can get in a little like weird, difficult, challenging spaces and I can make it because like I've trained essentially. Like it's training, it's reps. Someone's first experience, like it can, I feel like do like permanent harm.
Agreed.
So luckily I've turned her on to like some good people that are helping her and working through that, integrating and now she's doing a lot better. But I think those kinds of aspects are really important. And, that's a big part of this.
I love that you said that. And I think as wonderful as these different plants can be, they aren't for everybody. And they're not even for the people who they're for all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that, as you said, the facilitation is proper and appropriate. And the person going into the journey is going in being called to it for the right reasons. And so, I want to be very clear that I'm not advocating for this for everybody.
Like an example that I give is like I could be a facilitator, probably at this point, but and I can be the nicest, most amazing guy, like hold space, really guide someone well, and not hijack their experience where I'm telling them what to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
That's really for them to come to. Like I'm just like I'm holding space, I'm keeping them safe, I'm helping them integrate on the other end, but I'm not hijacking it, which a lot of people do. But let's say that, it's a young woman that's like heard that I'm great. And again, I could be great. I could have led thousands of people very successfully, done the best job, but maybe she's a victim of sexual assault. And I'm not the right person right now.
Yeah.
It could be a woman. And then I think, at first it should be a woman and then it should be maybe a married couple. And then somewhere down the road, maybe it's a man, solo. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, that kind of stuff is really important where you don't just let someone else tell you what's safe, where you feel through, where you have intuition. A lot of times we bypass our own intuition. And that is like one, speaking our truth and trusting your intuition are two of the most powerful lessons that I've learned out of journeys. Like if there's like one through line that, out of every person that I talk to, it's those things. Trusting your intuition, speaking your truth, having sovereignty. Like those are the most powerful lessons that, no matter what it is, like whether you're grappling with being, trans, you had a child die, maybe you want to, quit your job, maybe you want to get a divorce, like, whatever, like, am I gay or, whatever it is, that's the through line is like, can I speak my truth and can I trust my intuition? And when you don't trust your intuition and when you don't speak your truth, that results in like the manifestation of disease, of frustration, of pain, of really manifesting things that are things that you don't want in your life. It's kind of like away from thinking versus towards thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, then we'll get on the calendar and we'll have a whole different podcast. I look forward to that. Okay. Drinkupdate.com, right?
Yep.
Okay. And when we have a code unlearn for 25% off, let's go. Come on now. So that'll be
that's
linked.
A good one.
That's a deep discount. So stock up, people. I fucking love the product. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of you guys.
At Drink Update on Instagram.
Got that?
And
we'll link to that as well.
And then I'm at Shawn Wells, SHAWN. Yeah.
Daniel's not on there.
I'm not a.
I get you. I feel you. There's no shame in that. Kind of envious.
I'm on there, but not on there.
Yes. Okay. Good for you. Yeah, dude. Guys, thanks for being here. This has been awesome. Really
has been.
Stoked to meet you guys in person and get into the origin story and to understand this on a, Luke's done a great job of explaining it. Not as well as you guys did. So thank you. And looking forward to continuing this journey.
Let's do it.
Thanks for having us.
Hell yeah.